Caroline Paige, and I'm delighted to be here today and to chat to you a little bit about trans in the military. My own background, I was in the military for 35 years. I was the first officer to transition gender in the UK military back in 1999, and it was very scary then because the military of the UK barred LGBT. It was against the law to be LGBT in the military. So when I finally had the courage, I was aware of my trans identity from a very small age, but I grew up in a family environment that wasn't tolerant or diverse. So I had to hide all of that. So actually, I went to a boys' school, and as part of the boys' school there was the Air Cadets, and the Air Cadets was a boys-only organisation. So it's, in some ways it's fortunate that they thought I was a boy, because I was able to go off and do some flying with them, and I got a bug for flying. And so by the time I was 15 I was flying solo in gliders. By the time I was 17, 18, going on 18, I got my pilot's license, which was awesome for me. I had to do it for a scholarship because my family wasn't very wealthy. But it gave me this bug, and the only way I could carry on that bug was to go into the military. And I was aware through my dad, who was a sergeant in the army, what the military thought of LGBT people. So I knew I was going to have to hide who I was. Geography mapping the world. I'm going to start off with a geography test of you all for capitals. You never thought that was coming to you. No, I just wanted to, that's the theme of of the whole event. And I just wanted to show you a little bit of my experience, because it builds into, you can take from the UK experience exactly what's happening in other countries around the world in terms of trans people being employed. So when I joined the Air Force, I became a navigator on fighters, Phantoms, defending the UK. It was wonderful. It was a Cold War, and my job was to protect us all from the bad guys. They said join the military and see the world. Well, I saw the Iceland Faroes Gap for about 10 years out in the middle of the Atlantic hunting Soviet bombers. It was a really exciting job, but no girls allowed, no diversity in there. I normally show a photo of the squadron and it's all male faces. There's LGBT faces in there, but nobody knew that at the time, because obviously in that photo there's at least one trans woman, because I know, because it was me. Very scary time. Double life. I had to hide everything. I was scared that if I got found out by the military or outed by somebody, I would be, first of all, thrown out without honour, which meant lost a pension. But also I could go to prison. People did go to prison. Unlikely as an officer, but I could have done. But also I'd have been outed. I'd lost my house because I'd have lost my income. I knew I was going to lose my family and all the rest of it. So it was really scary. So throughout that time, I still wanted to be me, and I had me time in the privacy of my own home, but I was really worried about getting caught. Cold War ended. I saw an opportunity to go to helicopters, which was what took me into the military in the first place. So I went to helicopters and I ended up going off to Northern Ireland. And I was going to say, what's the relevance of Wales to my talk? Well, of course, I represent LGBT people in the military, and there was loads of LGBT people in the military from Wales, and I did do some time up in Valley and places like that as well. But anyway, so I did a little bit in Gulf War I and in Bosnia in 1995. So I was going out to pretty nasty places, but so I was used to hostility, but also there was that hostility of being trans, and I was really worried about that. But everything was coming to a crunch, because I was realising I missed my 20s, I was into my 30s now, and I was thinking, do you know what, this is not right, I need to live my life, and I wanted to live my life. So I decided to accept the consequences, because I thought if my family didn't come with me, then that wasn't true love, and I hadn't lost anything really. And if the Air Force wasn't able to cope, then I'd just have to deal with that. But I told the Air Force, and bizarrely, or not bizarrely, fantastically, they invited me to stay. And they said, okay, you're the first trans person we've had to serve openly in the Air Force. We've never done this before. And I said, well, neither have I.
Sorry, what year was this?
This is 1999. I'd already been sort of playing with hormones from 95, but it was all just getting that way, and then in 99 I told them. They decided to accept me. But what happened then was I was accepted and I served for 15 months. And then I was outed to the Sun newspaper. And once I did that, all hell broke loose. And then there was hate, 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 hate. And everybody in the military wanted to know why there was a trans person in the military. And the newspapers joined in and they said, I'll show you some comments a little bit later. So I was really worried that, yes, the Air Force had accepted me, but the people didn't. And I wouldn't go back to flying. Fortunately, people started putting their hands up and saying, whoa, 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 back off. Why are you giving Caroline a hard time? She's not the one with the problem. You are. And that was fantastic for me, because then I saw, actually, not everybody. If you only see all the hate coming out, then, of course, you think that everybody feels that way. But it wasn't. And it only took one person to actually stand up, and then the others started standing up, and I started seeing support. But I knew that all eyes were on me as the first transgender person to go on. And Johanna Wingate, who was a sergeant in the army, transitioned actually a month before me. We were about the same time. She's in Swansea, I think, and I was hoping that she would be here today. She's not in the room, are you, Joanne? No. She wasn't able to stay in the army because she was at the end of her engagement, so she left the services. She wanted to stay, but it was the end. It wasn't because she was trans. It was because she'd come to her contract end just after she transitioned. But she did some wonderful stuff in the army. So I was on my own. I had to go back to operations and prove that transgender people, it wasn't an issue being in the military. So I pushed to get back onto the front line, and I ended up going onto Merlin, helping to introduce this aircraft into service. 24 seat, this is my cockpit up here. 24 troops, 4 crew. And we very soon afterwards we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I did 4 tours in, I did 2 tours in Bosnia first, just to prove the aeroplane before we took it into somewhere more dangerous. And then we went to Iraq and did 4 tours there, 4 tours in Afghanistan. All of the comments against me were saying that there's no place for transgender people, you're a liability, you're a danger, you're going to be a risk to people. But actually, the skills that I had were crucial to people being able to stay safe flying around those kind of environments. I was a tactician, and I was responsible for being a specialist in the defensive systems for missile attack and gun attack and rocket attack and all that kind of stuff. So actually, after a short while, people realised that, and I was able to make decisions which helped keep them safe. And all of a sudden, they're asking me to go there. I'm like, no, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. But they were asking me to go because they felt safer there. So that kind of completely destroyed the perception that a transgender person was going to be a liability or a danger and no use in the military. And in fact, I started winning, I won lots of awards and won in New Year's Honours List. So for me, that meant that everybody could now see that being transgender in the military was not an issue. So that was my kind of proud moment, just to do that. So that's scene. I just want to show you, actually, this is a map of the world. You can barely see the rest of the countries. The ones that are highlighted in blue are those countries that permit trans people to serve in the military. Not a lot, not a lot at all. What does that say about those countries? Not necessarily the forces, because sometimes the forces are open to it, but actually the governments and society and the people and all the rest of it aren't, and that pressure is put on the military. And military is always perceived as macho, sort of war-fighting, killing environments. Nothing like that at all. Obviously that is a job that they have to do, and it's normally to protect people, rather than these days for us to actually go in and be aggressive. But also there's a lot of hurricane relief and aid to communities and aid to countries and all that kind of stuff. But I'll just look. United Nations recognises 193 countries. Good pop quiz answer for Trivial Pursuits and things if you're ever into quizzing. 193. 18. I put 20 up there now because actually this data, after that data came out, I heard that Poland and Brazil also allowed trans people to serve in the military. So only 20 out of 193. And when you look at that in a transgender perspective, you can bet your bottom dollar that's LGBT as well. Those countries aren't happy about having gay people serving in their militaries. Which passes a message to the population. I'm going to very quickly look at America, because America has been in the news recently. UK first sort of decided that being gay in the military was wrong. It was the Royal Navy back in 1661. Because the Air Force, 100 years today, really? 100 years old? Not today, 1st of April, 100 years old. A little bit after the Navy. Then in 1983, there was a soldier who went to jail for being discovered to be gay. military jail, because obviously it wasn't against law in civil world. And he took his case to the European Court of Human Rights, and it failed because the European Court of Human Rights came down on the military side and said, it's bad for morale, isn't it, with the troops having somebody who's gay. So then a lot of campaigning happened. 1991, an organisation called Rank Outsiders, which was people who had been dismissed from the military for being gay, got together with Stonewall, and they took on another case, and this time they argued about the fact that it's everybody's right to have their private life, and that's how things started happening then. They started looking at it as a right, a freedom to be LGBT and not have the military turn around and dictate your life and say, well, you can't do that because and so on. So it says partial discrimination there. So it said basically that the military said, okay, we agree it's not, we shouldn't be sending people to jail for being gay, but we still want gay people in the Air Force, in the military, in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, or transgender people either. 1999 was when myself and Joanne stuck our hands up. Well, actually it was before that, in 98, but 99 we transitioned. So trans service jumped the gun a little bit because the European Court of Human Rights finally got its head around that, and the military decided that LGB was fully inclusive, and so the law changed then in January 2000, the bar was lifted. In America, actually the War of Independence is when the Americans started saying that LGBT people couldn't serve, but there's lots of records of women dressing as men and going off to fight in the American War of Independence. But it became formal policy in World War II, and then in 1993 came Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which I think was under Clinton, and they said basically, okay, don't tell anybody you're gay, and we won't ask. But if you were found out to be gay, then obviously there was still an issue and you were still dismissed from the military, so it was kind of not really much help at all whatsoever. That ended under Obama in 2011, but only LGB, not the T. Still no T, because trans people are mental, they've got something going wrong in their brains and they're a danger on operations and their liability to each other. I've just got a notice, 30 minutes left. Sorry, an hour. Right, 5 minutes. Right, so basically Obama lifted that. He allowed, after 2 years of a study with generals, commanders, politicians, policy people, medical people, other forces like the UK, said there was no reason why trans people couldn't serve in the military. So he lifted it. And then along came Mr. Trump. I ended up going to a conference in 2014. This is what the Americans were saying. This is what the UK press said about me also. So I was able to go to them and say, look, I've been in the military for 15 years by now as an openly trans person, and I've done 10 tours on operations alongside American forces. So what you're saying is completely out to lunch, really. So 2016, trans inclusive service in the States. July 17, Trump. And this is what he said. And he tweeted it in three tweets. And I like the second one, because if you missed the first one and you missed the last one, the second one says, transgender individuals serve in any capacity in US military. Brilliant. But that's what he said. Consulting with my generals and military experts, not. He spoke to his mate, because that survey had spoken to all of the commanders and chiefs already with Obama. Then he said, transgender individuals not to serve in any capacity in the military. Wrong. They're already serving. It's just that they're not serving openly. So you've always had transgender people in the military, so you can't say in any capacity because they're always there. Just like I had to hide myself for the first part of my career. The military needs to be focused on decisive and overwhelming victory. How can it do that if it's looking inwards to find out if people in its own organisation who are fully trained and already out there doing jobs, how can it focus when it's having to look at itself? And of course burdened with tremendous medical costs and disruption. That's what the message said. The government will not accept transgender individuals and they're a burden. How does that look to the rest of the world who are looking up at the leader of the free world? Within America, transphobia went through the roof because everybody now sees this is endorsed by the president of the country. So it had a huge effect, and not just on trans either, on LGB. There's 3 statements there which kind of completely that one proves that the medical costs were just a tiny part of the normal medical costs, and actually issue of Viagra cost more than looking after trans people. 267 days, made up figure, I can tell you about that. And the previous Secretary of Defence said there's a loss of focus, tell me how transgenders can contribute to the military, and I had 15, 16 years of proving that. I have got a book, by the way, I've written a book. If anybody wants to speak to me about the book, please do ask me afterwards. And I got some cards, so you can always look it up online. But I ended up getting invited onto television and radio to speak about Trump. And what I found was Trump, the UK got, those three ladies were wonderful, and they got behind me. And I was fighting this lady from New York who was very out, Trump's rep. She'd been brought on as an ex-Marine lady to say that transgender people shouldn't serve in the military. And between the four of us, we just wrecked her. Absolutely wrecked her. Right, but what I want to say is I'm now down to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20 minutes. 2 minutes. As I said this morning, there's been a lot of stuff in the press which is really hitting on trans people, really. And it's all been taken out of context. Schools, C of E, has been about school children and issues there. And if you read the C of E thing, for instance, they were just bringing into line guidance, because they had guidance for LGB pupils and all pupils on bullying and inclusion. And they just wanted to bring trans into it. So they made this statement, and basically they said a primary school child shouldn't be stopped from going into a toy box and pulling out a toy of their choice. They shouldn't be imposed on gender and all the rest of it. That's all they said. And the papers turned it into the Search of England is saying that boys should be going to school in dresses. Yeah. And if you ever see anything in the media, please do look into the detail, because they just choose a little slice out there to sensationalise the statement. Right, I'm going to wrap up now. So, and the same happens within the military. The military got accused of gender-neutral language and army recruiting. Guess what? Guess who got all the blame for all of this? Trans people. And actually, the gender-neutral thing wasn't about trans people, it was about gender. So anyway, very, very quickly, America, massive influence around the world, is making a statement that, you know, trans people, don't trust them, burden, horrible. Putin's doing the same. He said trans people are mad and therefore they're illegal to drive.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing he hasn't got a license either. UK, we're good, but we've got a long way to go. But actually, we're way ahead of most other countries, so we've got a bit of a responsibility. Trump has been stopped at the moment by the legal system. Fortunately, the federal courts have said, no, that's contrary to the Constitution. Plus, your argument is complete hoop. So we're not going with it. So they've stopped him at the moment. Europe, I work in the Europe now. I left the Air Force in 2014, but I teach European militaries the skills I taught in the Air Force. 13 different countries there. Only 7 of them allow trans people to serve, but the others have no issue with me teaching and flying with them and teaching them skills. They've got no issues about trans at all. It's just the governments, actually. So what that means is we need to respect our history. It defines our now and our future. It's not just in the past. We need to capture all the lessons learned and the importance of role models, people being able to stand up and say that's hoop, but not just trans people, LGBT people, allies, massively important. People get behind us, because if we always hear just hate, 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 people think that that must be true. We need the positive out there as well. So the superpowers have a responsibility, and hopefully Trump's going to get his comeuppance and on the next election, and he'll be replaced by somebody who will revoke his revokes, hopefully. The UK, the Commonwealth, we've already heard about, big issues there, and beyond, so things to think about. Right, my final 2 slides. Trump has been defeated by the courts at the moment. However, all eyes are on 23rd March 18, because he's trying to circumnavigate the courts and things like that, and that was his original, when he tweeted and put the orders out to the Department of Defence, his original end, stop transgender people. From March 18, the US forces must have reinstigated the old policy of exclusion. That's it.